It is now time for our Hispanic Observance.
Most of us know the We Shall Not Be Moved song, one of the most moving union songs of all time. But Joan Baez, whose father was born in Mexico, wrote the words in Spanish. And for me, it's even more powerful. I think you have the words, but if you don't, you can sing the universal la la la, because you know the tune. No, no, no nos moverán. No, no, no nos moverán como un árbol firme junto al río. No nos moverán. Unidos en la vida, no nos moverán. Unidos en la vida, no nos moverán como un árbol firme junto al río. No nos moverán. No, no, no nos moverán. No, no, no nos moverán como un árbol firme junto al río. No nos moverán. Unidos en la lucha, no nos moverán. Unidos en la lucha, no nos moverán como un árbol firme junto al río. No nos moverán. No, no, no nos moverán. No, no, no nos moverán como un árbol firme junto al río. No nos moverán. Unidos en la huelga, no nos moverán. Unidos en la huelga, no nos moverán como un árbol firme junto al río. No nos moverán. Last time. No, no, no nos moverán. No, no, no nos moverán como un árbol firme junto al río. No nos moverán. Okay, one more time. Come on. No, no, no nos moverán. No, 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 no nos moverán como un árbol firme junto al río. No nos moverán. Oh, no nos moverán.
Oh, wow, what a great beginning, and it's gonna get better. You know, here in Washington, D.C., if we really want to be honest, the last couple months have not been necessarily happy ones for Hispanics or, for that matter, for anyone else. And despite our best efforts and our friends' best efforts, comprehensive immigration reform has not happened, and it is stalled in the House of Representatives. And then there's the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has undermined the Voting Rights Act of 1965, and it has decided that the super rich and the corporation can spend whatever they want to elect whomever they want to public office. What's more, the Supreme Court has decided that states can bar public universities from considering race in their admissions policies. In her blistering dissent to this decision, Justice Sonia Sotomayor said, "We ought not sit back and wish away rather than comfort the racial inequality that exists in our society." Bravo, Justice Sotomayor. We agree 100%. NEA is committed to confronting the racial inequality that exists in our society, wherever it exists. You know, if we were the sort of people who discouraged easily, this would be the time to be discouraged. But we aren't that kind of people. No way, no how, not ever. If we discourage easily, we would never have stayed in education. We wouldn't be there every day for our students, worrying about them, challenging them, cheering them on, and keeping them on task. One of the reasons we love today's guest speaker. Where'd she go? Dolores is such a friend. What a wonderful person to have Dolores Huerta here. And she is one that absolutely lives every single day of her life that you never let setbacks discourage you. She has never given up, and she keeps fighting for what she believes in. And it was you, Dolores, who taught us in times such as today to say, "Si se puede." Si se puede. Si se puede. Yes. Si se puede. Si se puede. No. Sergio says, "You want us to keep going?" No, not yet. Not yet. But as long as families are suffering, as long as our democracy is in peril, as long as racism persists, we will never give up. We will never give in. And now let me introduce another special person here at NEA, the chair of the NEA Hispanic Caucus, Marina Helena Cantu-Claire. Marina?
Thank you, Dennis, and thank you, Lily, for the wonderful song, and to all of you who participated. We appreciate your participation at this time. Buenos días a todos. Good morning to everyone. Thank you, and it is a great honor and my privilege to introduce to you our guest, our keynote speaker, Dolores Huerta, a true legend, a living legend, who at 84 years young is going to stand and speak before you. For me, Dolores Huerta personifies the American dream. Hers is not one of those rags to riches story. Hers is an even better story. Hers is a story of someone who dedicates her entire life to helping the poorest and the most powerless people among us to achieve respect and dignity. No one could have guessed when Dolores Huerta was born in a very small mining town in northern New Mexico. Her father, a farm worker and a miner, that she would one day become a living legend and an icon. With elementary and high schools named after her, or that one day she would receive the Presidential Medal of Freedom, or that a movie star would one day portray her in a Hollywood movie. And I hope all of you went to see it. Public education made it possible for Dolores Huerta to do what she has done. After her parents divorced, she moved with her mother to Stockton, California. California. California in the house. All right. And there she attended public schools, elementary through high school, and she was an excellent student. Most people do not know this. She went on to attend Delta College, earning her bachelor's degree and a provisional teaching credential. She is one of us. She is a teacher. She is an educator whose teaching career was short-lived because she had a higher calling. She couldn't stand seeing her students, the children of farm workers, come to school hungry and without shoes. So began her lifelong journey of working to empower the poor and the oppressed. She left the classroom to become a community organizer, and she met another community organizer who we all know, Cesar Chavez. The two young organizers discovered that they shared a common dream. They both wanted to help the farm workers organize into a union, just like ours, powerful, strong, still standing strong, advocating for those who need our help. Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez launched the National Farm Workers Association, which became the United Farm Workers Union. As the new movie Cesar Chavez shows, Dolores Huerta was not only a skilled organizer, she was and she continues to be a brilliant strategist. Dolores is a strong Hispanic woman. She always knew how to let Cesar Chavez know when she thought he was wrong. Don't we all? Come on, let's go. Their arguments were epic, but they never affected their close working relationship. We can all agree to disagree, but we also know and recognize our familia. In the 1960s, Dolores Huerta directed the nationwide campaign to boycott California table grapes. This action gained widespread public support for the farm workers, and the boycott forced the growers to come to the bargaining table. It was at this time that Dolores Huerta came in contact with the leaders in the women's rights movement. She realized that she too was a feminist. Her strong and independent mother had laid the foundation for her being a feminist. I would like to add that the flag that I carry, and I carried in, belonged to a migrant worker who marched with Cesar Chavez. It has Dolores' signature from that time, and it now also has Richard Chavez's signature on it. This flag represents a lot. There are risks that we all have to take when we are lifelong activists and agitators, including being arrested. At the age of 58, during a nonviolent protest in San Francisco, Dolores Huerta was attacked by a baton-wielding police officer who broke 4 of her ribs and shattered her spleen. The injuries were life-threatening for Dolores, but she is the fighter. She survived them, and she's here before you today. Following a lengthy recovery, Dolores Huerta took a leave of absence from the union to focus on women's rights. She crisscrossed the country encouraging women to run for public office, and here we are. Today, as president of the Dolores Huerta Foundation, she continues to advocate for poor families and works to develop new leaders for the cause. Most importantly, Dolores Huerta keeps alive the spirit of Si Se Puede. I know, ladies and gentlemen, that our living legend, our living icon, is here, and I present to you Dolores Huerta.
Muchas gracias, Maria Elena Cantu. Thank you very much, Mary Helen Cantu. And President Van Roekel, thank you very much for inviting me. And I want to thank all of the board members here for giving me this great honor of being able to address your board. To me, this is a great honor because I believe that you educators are really the soul of the nation. You really are. And we were talking about this flag that has a signature of Richard Chavez on it. Richard was Caesar's brother. He's also the person who designed the farm worker eagle, and was actually my husband also, just to let you know that. But the reason I want to mention Richard, in addition to what I just mentioned, is that he always said that educators and teachers were going to go straight to heaven, okay? No bypass on it, straight to heaven, because of all that they have to put up with in trying to educate our nation's children. And also, I like to remind people that Franklin Delano Roosevelt, when we see all of the cuts in education that we have had to face over the last few years with the recession, during the Deep Depression of the 30s, Franklin Delano Roosevelt said he would not cut 1 cent from education or $1 from libraries because he said that the teachers and the educators were the soul of the nation. They were the soul of the nation. How different that is from what we've had to go through recently. And not only I believe that our educators are the soul of the nation, but you're also the conscience of the nation. And I say that in view of what we have seen recently when we hear about Donald Sterling and the racist remarks that he has recently stated, that I think, I guess a lot of people were shocked when they heard what his statements were about African Americans. I'm sure he probably holds the same view about Mexican Americans maybe and other people of color that were not expressed. But to me, I was not surprised because unfortunately we still have a lot of that racism in our society. And a lot of it, as we know, is just straight ignorance, right? It's just straight, because people do not know, people do not know. And I believe that, again, this is where, because educators have so much, and I do think, as the quote up there, is that you do have so much power, that there is a lot that educators can do to start erasing and chipping down and trying to get rid of the racist mentality that we have in the United States of America. For one thing, you know, when we talk about the immigration debate that has been forefront in our country today, a lot of people don't remember, number one, that immigrants built the country, that unless you're Native American, your people came from somewhere, right? That that all people were given the opportunity to become residents and citizens of the United States of America. Many without most without all of the obstacles that today's immigrants have to face when they're trying to become citizens of the United States of America. People don't remember that in the 1920s, we actually had more foreign-born in the United States than we had native-born. And guess what? People could vote, even if they were not citizens. I mean, there was no procedure then. They could just vote. And so we have to constantly remind people of that so that they can remember the history of the United States of America. The other thing I'm just going to throw, and this is kind of a larger topic that I don't want to go into in a lot of detail because of lack of time, but when we think of all of the immigrants that are coming into the country right now, people don't realize that the big wave of immigrants that we've had after the amnesty bill that passed in 1986, which legalized, I think, 3 million immigrants, including 1,400,000 farm workers, is that we had something that was passed in the United States of America called the free trade agreements, right? And the free trade agreements actually allowed U.S. companies to go into Mexico and Central America and set up shop over there, and thereby driving people out of their own countries. And I want to mention this, like the corn, the maize, which is native to Mexico. Well, Mexico today imports more corn from the United States than what it grows in Mexico. And that's because we subsidize our corn to make it cheap. So when we talk about the 11 million undocumented that are here in our country, many of the undocumented happen to be farmers. And there's no way that a small farmer in Mexico that maybe has his family or a few employees can compete with the agribusiness that we have in Kansas, Iowa, et cetera. You know, so because our corn is so much cheaper than Mexico that imports the corn from the United States instead of letting the people there grow it. So our foreign policies actually impact, and this is why we have this vast immigration that's come in from Central America and Mexico to the United States, including the big box stores like Walmart that have gone into Mexico and Central America that put the small shopkeepers out of work. And then we have the big factories like the maquiladoras. So it's our foreign policies that have actually created this huge immigration that has come in from other countries. And at some point we have to use our technology and our skills to help other countries actually develop their corporations and their economy instead of U.S. going in there and taking over the economies. And so there's a lot of this stuff that, you know, people just don't know. They're not aware of what's going on. I remember when the free trade agreements passed, The only people that really were concerned and that seemed to know about this were the people in Oaxaca and Chiapas, Mexico. Most people in the United States, except for the labor unions, had no clue of what was going on. But those people, the peasants over there, demonstrated against the free trade agreements and continue to do so. So again, as citizens of the United States, we have to be aware of things that are happening. Now, the other thing is in terms of the racism against people from Mexico and Central America, sometimes we have to remember, let's look again at history. Right now, we're very concerned about what's happening in the Ukraine, with the Russians coming in and taking over this country in Ukraine. Well, actually, when we remember that the United States took a third of Mexico, 1/3 of Mexico, which is now the Southwest, which is Texas, California, Arizona, New Mexico, parts of Utah and Idaho, were all part of Mexico. And it kind of happened like overnight. It wasn't like a big war like they did. I mean, there was, I guess, a war that happened at that time. But, kind of, okay, we have to, this is part of history, that all of the Southwest at one time belonged to Mexico. And of course, after that land was taken from Mexico, there was a genocide. There was a genocide against Mexicans. Mexicans were killed. Native Americans were killed. Many of the Native Americans went to Mexico or to Canada to escape that Holocaust that we had here in the United States of America. When we think, sometimes we have to read Howard Zinn's History of the United States of America to really know our real history, which is really one that is built on violence and genocide of many of the Native peoples here. Again, we kind of overlook that in our history, and so I think that this kind of perpetuates the racism that we have in our society. And we have to always remind people that it was, again, these immigrants or people of color that built the country. When we think of, I was in Virginia. I know we have people here from the state of Virginia. Here in the audience, yes. I was in Virginia for Terry McAuliffe, the new governor's inauguration, and I remember Terry McAuliffe saying at the governor's mansion there, this is the oldest governor's mansion here in the United States of America. And he said, and it was built by Thomas Jefferson. And then I thought to myself, it was built by his slaves, right? And so when we think of, that the immigrants, again, built our country, people from Mexico that came in here and they worked on the railroads. My great-grandfathers on my father's side, they worked in the mines, as it was mentioned earlier. My dad was a coal miner. They worked on the railroads, on the mines. They did the buildings, and of course, working in agriculture. So, we have to remind people who built the country. It was immigrants that built the country. And because of this past history that we have of slavery and, of not really honoring the people that really built the country, and by the way, we know immigrants today are still doing a lot of the heavy lifting that we have in our society, and yet we're not really respecting them or honoring them for what they do. And so it's kind of like we have this kind of mentality that because we do not honor the people that work with their hands, and then the racism kind of perpetuates that, that we don't have to honor them. So I think it's important as educators that we kind of remind people of this history so that we do not have this kind of racism that continues. The other thing is that we know that in terms of our, in terms of education, what the Latino community has done, one of the things that came out of the farm workers movement, of course, was when the farm workers went out on strike and they did their marches and they did their boycotts, it kind of inspired the young people in the cities to go out there and do the same. And so we had the walkouts in the schools. We had the walkouts in Los Angeles and in Texas and New Mexico, Colorado, and other places there, where Latino students were demanding that they see more of themselves in the classrooms, that they were demanding better treatment in the classrooms. And it would be, this all happened in the 60s and in the 70s, and it would be wonderful if we could stand here and say, hey, everything's A-okay now, right? That, somehow we don't have those issues anymore. But unfortunately, because, again, of the recent masses of immigrants that have come into the United States, we do have a lot of issues today. And I really have to say that as a community organizer still, with the Dolores Huerta Foundation, the work that we do, a lot of the work that we are doing is in education. because we do see that we have huge, huge rates of expulsions and suspensions, especially of Latino and African American students. Which means that we really got to advocate to change some of these policies, you know. Some of these policies of willful defiance, you know, kids are getting suspended and expelled because they talk back, and I know many educators in the room shake their heads. I mean, I was a teacher once, so I can understand, you know, why it's hard to work in a classroom when you have people that are disrupting the classroom, et cetera. But we've really got to work a lot harder to bring in more positive behaviors, keep kids in school instead of suspending them and expelling them. In the area where we work out in California, unfortunately, we have seen hundreds of kids that have been suspended and expelled. And so pretty much we can say to those children that their lives are pretty much damaged, you know? And in many cases, their lives are kind of over because they're not going to get the kind of an education that they need. And so we've got to work together, I think, between parents and students and educators to make sure that we can stop that and that we have a lot more cultural competency. I remember hearing once about a young man that was suspended, or not suspended, but he was called to the principal's office because he had drawn a picture of people attacking a sphere, like you know, he drew this picture with a sphere and people attacking the sphere with sticks in their hands. It was a piñata, okay? It was a piñata. And the teacher thought that this student was drawing some kind of a violent overture, you know, by having kids with sticks attacking the sphere. So we've got to have a lot of more cultural competency, you know, that can be taught in the classroom so that people will understand that what they might think is really something violent really isn't. And we've got to do a lot more of that. I have good news, especially for people from California. You know, we just passed Proposition 30. I don't know how many of you know about that. But, and for the rest of you from the rest of the states here, hopefully that your folks over there can also initiate some of the work that we did in California in passing Proposition 30. What Proposition 30 did, for those of you that don't know, is that we actually taxed the millionaires in our state. Mm-hmm. So the millionaires, anybody in California who makes $1 million or more has to pay 3% more in state taxes. If they pay, if they make $500,000 more, they have to pay 2% more in state taxes. If they make $250,000, they have to pay 1% more in state taxes. As a result of this proposition, which was on the ballot, and it was, of course, supported by our Governor Jerry Brown, the state of California now has over $6 billion more in state funds, $6 billion more. And the bulk of that money went to education, okay? It went to education. So when we talk about income inequality, you know, when we talk about income inequality, this is the kind of work that we need to do. And I really, when I talk about the power of educators, because you are everywhere, you're in every neighborhood throughout the United States of America, then we have got to use the power of educators to start pushing for some of these initiatives so that we can make sure that our educators get the type of monetary support that they need to do their work. I mean, even when we think about the attack in many states on teachers' pensions, I mean, this is so wrong that, you know, people who put away, left money on the table, basically, because when they wanted to retire, they would have something to retire on, and yet many municipalities are saying, oh, that's our money now, okay? They want to keep your money. So we've definitely got to be able to how to fight this. And the other thing is that I am appalled. I was just recently in Washington State. I'm on the commission of the National Commission on Voters' Rights, and hearing about some of the disparities that we have in terms of our civic education, that in many schools now, they don't even teach civics anymore. When I mean about civics, I'm talking about teaching people why they should vote, you know, that they've got the right to vote and that they've got to get engaged. Because when we talk about the Supreme Court decisions that your president just referred to, the only way that we can counteract these Supreme Court decisions is to make sure that every single person gets out there and votes. Because we know that the only way that we can counteract those jillions of dollars that are going to be coming in for elections which are going to jeopardize everything that we have, is that people have got to get out there and they've got to be able to vote. So I would hope that in every single high school that educators encourage the young students that they have to vote, encourage them on why it's important for them to vote, and maybe even have some kind of voting exercises. I was once in Santa Ana, California, where they have a kinder caminata, when they have all the little kindergarten children come out and do a big march. This is an incredible scene to see hundreds of little kindergarten kids, coming out there and marching, and then at the end of the march, they get to vote for their favorite cartoon character, right? Whether it's Mickey Mouse or Goofy or Donald Duck, but they go through the whole exercise of voting. And so I think we've really got to instill this into every single person, because we know right now, even the predictions, I just heard a prediction that, again, young people are not going to be voting again. So I think that's got to be part of the education that we give them, because our democracy stands on this. If people do not vote, we could not have a democracy. We've got to be able to do this, and we've got to make that our mission, to make sure that everybody votes. And not only that they vote, but they get out there and knock on doors and get other people out to vote. We never would have passed public utility without that. And so I think that's, we have a lot of work to do. And again, going back to what we need to teach people in school, we've got, I call it teaching them science. One way that we can also end racism is just to remind everybody, who we are. There's only one human race. We have a lot of different nationalities. We have a lot of different cultures, but we only have one human race. And it's science, right? It's science. And what is the scientific name of our human race? Somebody out there? Homo sapiens. Okay, we learned that, I think, in the 3rd grade or something, So maybe we've got to repeat it in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, right all the way up to the 12th grade. Remind people who we are. We're Homo sapiens. And again, where did our human race begin? Let's say it out loud. Africa. Okay? What does that mean? That means that we have a lot of, as I said, different nationalities and cultures, but we are all Africans, right? Okay, let's remind ourselves of that, and let's remind our students of that. Let's constantly remind them who we are, that we are all Africans of different shades and colors. And so we can say to the White Citizens Council, members of the Ku Klux Klan, some of those people in the Tea Party, not all, get over it, you're Africans. Okay, get over it. And, I had my DNA done recently, and they wanted to know how Latino are you. It was some kind of a local television station, and when they came and they swabbed my cheek, and they sent it off, and I got it back. And so I asked them, I said, they asked me where my parents were from. My grandparents on my mother's side, they were Spanish and French, and on my dad's side, they were from Mexico, indigenous people. And so I asked them, well, did my Africanness show up? And they said, it did. It did. It showed up in my DNA, okay? And I'm sure the same thing will happen to everybody else here in the room, okay, at some point. Also, part of it was a Neanderthal. I said, where did that come from? From the European side. 0.005, okay? So I guess I combine everybody, all right? So I think, if we can constantly remind people of that, and so that, we can kind of end the racism in our society when we remind everybody that we are one human race. And so I'm going to ask you to do a chant on this one, and this is from South Africa. It's a word called the Wozani, and it means that we are coming together to fight for justice, okay? All of us. We're coming together to fight for justice. And I'm going to quote Cornel West. Cornel West says that justice is the public face of love. Justice is the public face of love. And if we turn that around, we say injustice is the public face of hate. Injustice is the public face of hate. So we've got to, fight for justice to make sure that we have a society that's a democratic society with no discrimination against anybody, women, LGBT community, people of color, etc. And so I'm going to say this word to you and want to share this word with you. The word is Wozani. Can you say that word? Wozani. So I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and I want all of us to shout that word together, Wozani, to remind us that we are one human family and that we have to protect and fight for each other, okay? I'll say 1, 2, 3, and let's all shout the word really loud. Wozani. 1, 2, 3. Wozani. That's great, that's great. Now, another thing I just want to mention, we know that there are some cafeteria workers here at the building that are trying to get their union. They belong to Unite Here. When you talk about my many arrests, I've had a couple of them with Unite Here, actually, and when they're trying to organize. So we want to support them to be able to get their collective bargaining agreement to get their union. And I also want to mention just a little bit about my organization, the Dolores Huerta Foundation for Community Organizing. And basically, we go into communities, we hire organizers, we train them, and then they meet with people in their homes, and then we form an organization. And we've been able to do so much because once you teach people that they have power, they actually get out there and they're able to take care of some of the issues in their own community. And the good news about this too, although we're a nonprofit, once we teach people how to organize, they actually get out there and they do the work themselves. And many of our residents that we have organized, guess what? They get themselves elected to office. And we have 4 of our residents that are now sitting on school boards, okay? We want them to get on those school boards so that we can start, when we talk about the education that we need, we've got to get the history of immigrants. We've got to get the history of people of color in every single classroom from kindergarten through 12th grade, so that when people get out of high school, they already know about the history of what the contribution of people of color have been to this country, and also of women, right? Because if we don't do this, if we don't start teaching children from the time that they're very, very young, it's never going to happen. So if you want to know more about the Dolores Huerta Foundation for Community Organizing, we have a website, and it's really easy. It's doloreshuerta.org. doloreshuerta.org. And if you want to join us and help us in the work that we do, all you have to do is text ORGANIZE 51555. It's easy. You can text ORGANIZE 51555, and you can join our movement, because we would like to be able to get more community organizers, send them throughout the United States of America, teach people that they have power and that they can organize. And I know many of you here in this room, I just want to remind you that you also have the power. When we were organizing farm workers, people would say to Cesar Chavez and myself, how are you going to organize the farm workers? You know, they don't have any money, they don't speak English, they're not citizens of the United States, you know, they don't have any kind of a formal education. How are you going to organize them? And so what we would say to the workers is, you do have power. And the power is in your person. And you don't need any other kind of power except the power that you've got in your person. But we know that one person can't do it alone, that in order to be able to make any kind of changes, that we've got to come together in organization like the one that you have here. And then we've got to take direct action. And this is the only way that we can make the changes. And the farm workers did this, of course. We finally got them to understand that they also had a responsibility, and that if they didn't make the changes, nobody would make it for them. And so they went on strike. You know, they did the marches, they did the boycotts, and I do want to mention one person, and I'm sure many of you may know this already, but we have in your midst one of your own board members, a young volunteer who came to work with the farm workers for no money at all, $5 a week, or maybe he got $10 a week, I don't know. But anyway, and he was on our grape boycott and lettuce boycott and wine boycott for 8 years, and that's George Sheridan. George, would you stand up for this? Stand up for a minute. He still wears his farm worker button. And I mean, he was a great example of somebody that, you know, people who come out of their comfort zone and they make that sacrifice. And because of people like George, you know, farm workers out there, they have toilets in the fields, they have cold drinking water, they have rest periods, they have safety standards, and the right to organize in California. And we're able to get so many benefits for farm workers, for people because of George, people like George. So thank you very much, George. Thank you very much for all of your sacrifice. So I'm going to ask all of you a question, okay? We know what we have to do. do, and we know, when I say that, I know sometimes it's not easy, because sometimes you don't have the school boards that really support you in what you have to do, but, got to get involved in those elections. You got to make sure you get good school board members that support this progressive work that needs to be done, because we are in a crisis in our country. And it's up to us. If we're going to be able to save democracy, and we have to save it through education, we are the ones that have to do it. So I'm going to ask you all the question. I'm going to ask you, who's got the power? We do. Okay? And I want you to say, we've got the power, okay? Okay? And I'm going to say, what kind of power? And you're going to say, people power, right? Just like the farmer, because you got the people power. So I'm going to shout it out. I want you to answer really, really loud. Who's got the power? We got the power. What kind of power? People power. That wasn't very loud. I don't think we really believe it. Okay, let's remember too, when you have an education, your voice gets louder, not softer, okay? Contrary to what we've been told, okay? It gets louder. So look, we're going to do that one more time. But I want you to shout out very, very loud. Who's got the power? We got the power. What kind of power? People power. One more time, even louder. Who's got the power? We got the power. What kind of power? People power. Okay, so we know what we have to do. We've got to go out there and end racism and discrimination against everybody that we know of, okay? And get out there and get people engaged in voting, and that's how we can make it happen. And don't forget to join the Dolores Huerta movement. Just text 51555. Organize 51555. So we're going to do a little thing here, and we're going to do an organized hand clap. Because again, we can't make anything happen unless we do it together and we're organized. So we're going to say, when we said "si se puede," somebody was thinking, what the heck is that? "Si se puede" is in Spanish for yes, we can. As we know, our President Obama used that phrase. And when I met President Obama, he said, I stole your slogan. And I said, yes, you did. Okay. So let's put our hands up together, okay? And we're going to do an organized hand clap. Si se puede means yes, we can do it. We got the power. We're going to make it happen. Put your hands up. Let's go together. Si se puede. Si se puede. Si se puede. Muchísimas gracias. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having me speak to you this morning. I really appreciate it. And as I said, you're our conscience, you're our soul. You're going to make it happen for us. Thank you.
Isn't she wonderful? 84 years young. There we go. We're younger. Let's get out there. Let's advocate. Lily, take it away.
And this is a song from many decades ago in Argentina. They used to sing it in the streets when they would have demonstrations. Solo le pido a Dios que el dolor no me sea indiferente, que la reseca muerte no me encuentre vacía y sola sin haber hecho lo suficiente. Solo le pido a Dios que lo injusto no me sea indiferente, que no me abofetee la otra mejilla después de una garra me arañó esta suerte. Solo le pido diferente. Solo le pido a Dios que la guerra no me sea indiferente. Es un monstruo grande y pisa fuerte toda la pobre inocencia de la gente. Es un monstruo grande y pisa fuerte toda la pobre inocencia de la gente.
Thank you, Lily. Thank you, Marina, Mary Helen, and thanks to all of you. You know, I was sitting there, and when Dolores got up and was speaking, I leaned over to Lily and I said, God, I hope I look that good and have that much energy when I'm in my 80s. She said, Dennis, you don't look that good and have that much energy now. But to Dolores, our dear friend, I know that you have been many places with many important people, and you have honored us to be such an icon in the human and civil rights movement and in the labor movement, and we are honored and proud that you were here with us today. Thank you very much.